to everyone, however you prefer. Our speakers are going to be in conversation for around 20 minutes or so, something like that, leaving us about 20 minutes for discussion in the round, with a half finish at 12:45. So, to introduce our lovely speakers, Tali Shlomo is Head of Wellbeing at Shearman Sterling LLP and a globally recognised thought leader on diversity and inclusion. Sheila Champion-Smeeth is Global Head of Wellbeing, People and Communities at Cisco, where she's enjoyed a 20-year career. So, Tali and Sheila, I know you're going to start with the conversation. Over to you, and thank you again for doing this.
Thank you, Richard. So we thought we would just start, as Richard points out, just a conversation, because one of the things when we spoke about this a few weeks ago was showing up with vulnerability first and foremost, so that we can create some new place. Because when we are exploring how to support our leaders, be it our CEO or our management team, wherever we are in our organisation and in that structure and ecosystem, as I describe it, is how do we support them, and how do we support them through their own vulnerability? And in order to do that, sometimes we have to show our own vulnerability. And Sheila and I thought actually it would be really nice to just have a conversation around that before we start to explore interventions and how we might do that. Sheila, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and then I can share some of what I'm seeing, particularly from the insurance industry, because I'm still very much connected and I'm doing quite a bit in the insurance at the moment, so I'll share some of what's happening there.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks. And can you hear me okay, Tali?
Yes, perfect. Beautiful.
Good. You never know, the connection may drop out, so I do apologize if that happens, and if it does, I'll get back on straight away. But just to say a wonderful hello to you all today. I hope you're all keeping as well as you possibly can, and your families are as well. Yeah, it's great to be here with you all. So my name's Sheila Champion-Smeeth. I'm the Global Head of Wellbeing, as Richard said, for Cisco. And it's been a pretty busy time for me most recently. So yes, I've been with Cisco for 20 years. But more recently, at the beginning of January, actually, I started this role as Global Head of Wellbeing. And when I took it on, I didn't quite expect it to go down the path that it has, which I'm delighted about, because there's been such a need, obviously, right now, and a focus on the health and well-being of everybody across our organizations. I mean, you know, leaders, of course, but right through to the individual employee. And I don't know about all of you, but it's certainly been an interesting moment for me personally as I've gone through this. I've learned a lot of things about myself. I've dealt with many challenges, and it's just been a really a tough time. Some of the things that have happened for me, Tali, I don't know about you, but you know, I've really struggled not seeing my family. I'm a very big family person, and I've missed not being able to spend time with my mum and dad as much as I would. And they're not, you know, my dad's got some health challenges, and so, you know, there's lots of things that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. As I wake up on a Monday, I always think, okay, here we go again, another week in this kind of office. And we do a lot of remote working anyway in Cisco, but there's something different right now about the, I think it's because we're not allowed, or, you know, we haven't got as many choices as we used to have. There's a lot of restrictions in place for us. And so what we deal with emotionally and mentally is so significant right now. So it's about putting in steps to help deal with your own well-being so you can be there for others is so critical, I think.
I'm sitting here nodding and smiling because I can echo everything that you've just said. So yes, family, absolutely the core, the way I live, and been incredibly difficult on two instances, which I will share, because we said that we'll share some vulnerability here, and I'm going to share so that we can create this psychological safety. So my mum passed away 7 years ago, and every year we have a memorial for her, but we don't do it here. We do it where we took my mum home. And this was the first year we can go back home to do it. And even now when I'm sharing this with you, that was tough. That was tough. So even my immediate family here, so my dad and my siblings, I couldn't be with my immediate family. My immediate family is like 50 people. We're a big family. And so it's like a bittersweet moment. We look forward to being together during that time. And that was tough. And the reason I shared that, because that's going to stay with me for a very long time, And what it did is reminded me again and again and again, we have to nourish our own well-being before we can nourish other people's well-being. And today's conversation is about our leaders, our CEO, or whoever is in our management ecosystem. How can we support their well-being when we haven't even nourished ours yet? Whatever that is, if it's just making sure you get some sleep, proper sleep, if you make sure you get some proper breaks, food, exercise, whatever that is for you, it's so important you first of all nourish yourself before you nourish those around you. And the second piece is, Sheila, like you said, going just to see, my dad. This weekend was the first time I stepped indoors. That was a big moment. And I only stayed in for 10 minutes. I thought, no, apparently more than 15 minutes is at risk. And that's tough. So that's really tough. And so when I look at the leaders around us, I recognize that, and as us as HR professionals included in that, we're all pretty much about to hit burnout, right? Because we've had so many emotions going through. So many of us have had to restructure our business models. So many of us had to support our colleagues to work virtually or ensure that their well-being. And so that's how this conversation started about it. I could see the signs, not only for ourselves, but the people around us. And so I was really keen to explore what interventions can we put into place. And the psychological safety and the vulnerability is the first place.
Yeah, I completely agree, Tali. And, I'm sure that was incredibly difficult for you not to be able to go back. So, I'm sorry. I think there's this feeling of grief in so many things that we have right now. So, even again, if you're as strong as you possibly can be, mentally and physically, and resilient as you possibly can be, you can deal with those sort of situations a little bit better. Doesn't make them okay, of course, but I just think building your own strength and resilience is so important, as you alluded to. And I do think, from a leader perspective, I think there's an element of more vulnerability that's happening and taking place right now. And what I mean by that is, checking in with your team members on a more regular basis. And not just diving into the work, because clearly I would imagine most people are working in this way now, in our virtual worlds of working. And when you ask somebody, how are you? It's really about then actively sitting back and listening to that individual. And if you hear them jumping into the work side of things, find the ways of asking the questions that will trigger a slightly more personal conversation as well, because I think it's never been more important right now to understand truly what's going on for people. What are the boundaries that they need to have set in their lifestyle as well? So, is there homeschooling going on for some people? And is there some respect and some timings that we need to think about to help them with that? Or perhaps they want to do their exercise and the time of day that they want to do that is completely different to how it used to be. And then just really understanding, some people want to check in more regularly than others. So I think, leaders truly understanding what their team needs right now. There may be a bit of meeting overwhelm. I'm certainly seeing a bit of that at the moment happening, and people are sharing that they're feeling like their calendar is blocked back to back with meetings all throughout the day. So I think that, it's really important to just sort of stay connected with people to understand, how are they doing? We have a weekly check-in experience for our teams, where they can actually have those conversations, actually write it down within that online check-in system as well, which is a great way to say, these are my work priorities and these are my personal priorities for the week ahead. So I think that's a really lovely way of doing it.
I love the how are you. So I wrote a blog on this actually, or an article for someone on well-being on how are you, because when we typically ask how are you, we normally ask and go how are you, and then we move on to the subject matter that we really want to talk about or really urgent to talk about. And I've written on this that we kind of, when we ask how are you, it's like as though we've ascribed such importance to it, we don't give it the time and importance that it deserves. And so I really like how you describe what you do, which is something that I try and do most of the time, and I do it with my leaders, and I'm doing it in some leadership roles that I'm working on, not in a law firm, but I'm just speaking to leaders and actually just saying, we're going to spend the 5 minutes just exploring how we both are today. And that creates a psychological safety as well. It's okay for them to share how are they. And as you described, so many of us are grieving for different reasons. And I had this conversation several times now. We're all grieving for different things. Some people are grieving the fact that they can't even go to the office and they're urging to go to the office, the physical connectedness. And I think, I would say no one walks in your shoes, and how you feel is how you feel, and we should respect it and we should listen. So with the leadership that I'm seeing, it's really checking in from we're going to spend 5 minutes just exploring how we both feel today. What's going on for you right now? What's worrying you? Yes, the business is worrying. Yes, we need to focus on that. What else is worrying you? And we actually spend quite a bit more time now talking about family. We never would have done that, right? Because we're all going out for the same thing. And spending time talking about the different support mechanisms that's in place. So we all have our counselling in place. We all have all these wonderful wellbeing initiatives. How often does our CEO actually connect with us? And it's just reminding them on a human level what's available and how they can lean in and leverage on those tools. And if not for them, then their family members. How many kids do we know now are experiencing mental health, poor mental health? There's so much data out there. So we know prior to the pandemic, 1 in 4 will experience poor mental health. There's some data that suggests that an additional 500,000, I think it's more, additional 500,000 will experience poor mental health. And I don't think we'll see the results of the poor mental health until probably 12 months down the track. But so when I'm speaking to leaders, what I try and do is share, not only for them, but for the people around them, their family, their children, and so forth.
Yeah, definitely. I think as you talk about the leadership, Tali, one of our senior leaders in the organization, we've been doing these weekly check-ins where we connect via technology with all employees across the globe, and they can ask any questions. We have doctors on the call so that people can actually get some of their medical questions answered as well. Our CEOs there, our executive leadership team. And one of the executive leaders, she turned around to her bookshelf and she's like, I can't see anywhere a book here that tells me how to deal with a pandemic situation. And I think it was just so true, because normally we turn to previous research that helps us get through these challenging times. But of course, there isn't anything. We've never come across this before. And I think what's happened then is we've really had to come together as leaders to figure out how are we actually going to get through this. And of course, now we're thinking about how do we go to the next stage, and how are we going to set up our offices for people that are going to go back, but also dealing with people who still, are really not sure whether they want to go back right now. And I always say that different people need different things at different times, which I think is just so very true. And I think that's the biggest thing that's coming out for me at the moment is, respecting other people's situation and views, because we're all going to be dealing with this in different ways. We'll have similar experiences, but we're going to be dealing with it in different ways. And I think the respect and the kindness that we need to have for each other is huge right now. Showing compassion to somebody who's in a really difficult situation and acknowledging it, so that actually you can help them get through that challenging time is just critical. Because some people are probably feeling like they don't feel they can share some of the difficult situations they've got coming up for them. But what that then means is that they're going to be hiding something, so you're not going to be able to get your fullest out of them. And whereas if you respect what's going on for them and then think about, okay, this is how I can help you now, and this is how I can help you in the future, I think is so important as well, Tali. I think, there's just so much that leaders need to be thinking about and recognizing, but also, as you said at the beginning, for themselves first. So what's going on for me as a leader right now? What does that mean for me in my day-to-day work? And how do I reach out for help? I think so many people don't reach out for help as well these days because they're scared to ask.
And this is where it creates a wonderful opportunity for us as HR professionals, as the trusted advisor, to reach out to the CEO, to reach out to the leader and say, I've noticed, or I'm noticing, or to say, create a well-being profile. We create well-being profiles for all the staff, all the colleagues internally. are we doing one with the CEO? Let's work on that collaboratively in partnership. And I think that's so critical that we now really support our management team, our leadership team, our CEO, whoever is our first line of trusted advisor, and support them with their well-being. Because what you've just described, I think we're all going through. Every CEO now and leader is remodeling their business, is thinking, how do we come out of this? What is the new world going to look like? Where's my revenue coming from? And how's my product lines changing? And so forth. That's even before we've even considered what they're going for at home, whatever it is that they're going for at home. So how do we create a well-being profile for them like we do for everyone else? And what I've seen and what I've been doing is actually just, again, checking in and saying, how about we work on a well-being profile for yourself? We can start it off and you can work through it yourself privately if you're not feeling comfortable to share just yet. The other thing that I've noticed is happening is it actually now sits on an agenda item part of the leadership team. So as we talk about risk, every other risk that's going on, why are we not talking about our own well-being risk, if there is one? It might not be, and the whole purpose is to mitigate that risk from exploding.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've never been asked to join so many kind of leadership meetings or team meetings to actually talk about this topic, which is wonderful, and I'm so happy that it's happening. And what I find interesting is, how do we actually provide the tools to enable this to continue as we move forward as well, so that you don't necessarily have to have the global head of wellbeing coming into one of your team meetings or meetings where you get all the teams together. But you're actually got the tools and the tips to be able to have that conversation within your teams internally. There's a wonderful exercise that we do where we kind of ask people to bring a picture that shows you at your best. And so then in the team meeting, the first thing that people do is share their picture and they talk about why is that them at their best. And what it does is it kind of, you've got the prop. So because sometimes just talking is really hard, but you've got a picture, and what you'll see is people light up as they start talking about that picture. I shared one of me in Costa Rica on holiday, which I absolutely love doing, and I was challenging myself by going on a zip wire that I was so scared of doing. But what it did is it highlighted a few things to people a bit more that they might not know about me as well. So I think using things like that and tools to be able to sort of continue this discussion is so important. But I'm delighted that, people are talking more about the human you at work, more than we ever have done, because I just think that, everybody absolutely needs that right now in order to be able to be your best and your strongest for the business as well. As you say, that people have got so many things going on for them personally, with different family members probably going through different things as well, and you have concern for that, that it comes into your then everyday life. When you wake up in the morning, what are you doing to set some rituals and routines about the day to ensure that you are going to be, at your best throughout the day, not just for work, but at home as well. So, yeah, I think, and really the awareness is absolutely key from the moment you wake up to the moment that you go to sleep at night. What are the rituals you build throughout the day? I mean, the remote working world for most people, I would say, is probably very different to what they're used to. Of course, we had many people who were working remotely in the past anyway. But it's not just about the fact that your office is now very much in your home. It's almost like you are living from your office now. So how do you take those breaks? How are you making sure that you're, disconnecting from the laptop, from the iPhone, and you're actually having a really strong conversation with your family and you're engaged properly? Because it's easy to kind of slip back into, my office is right there, my laptop's right there, I'll just switch it open and do something. So I think it's really important to get the balance and the boundaries around that at the moment, Tali, as well.
Absolutely. I think it's critical. It's critical that if your CEO is sending an email at 11 o'clock at night, how is that role modeling? And we as HR professionals, how are we supporting our CEO and leaders to create those boundaries for themselves? Because role modeling is absolutely critical. I think this is a fabulous opportunity for us as HR professionals to bring well-being onto the agenda for post-pandemic. And I think one of the things for me is creating inclusive languages around well-being, and equipping our managers from CEO all the way through our organization on having those conversations on well-being. Just the hi, how are you? And just pausing. Being really comfortable with the pause. It's okay for silence. It's okay.
Yeah. No, it really is. And I've been doing that in some team meeting environments where, you know, I'm encouraging people to say something. And I will, you know, I'll ask the question, there'll be silence. And then I'll say to them, I'm fine with this silence until someone wants to share. And I think that's a really powerful thing to do, because you're acknowledging it, because sometimes it feels like a bit uncomfortable for people, but you're acknowledging the fact that, you know, everyone's sort of thinking about, do I share this or don't I? Once you acknowledge it, they know it's going to be there. Therefore, then they will step into the conversation, which I think is really great.
And I think what also is important to support is going back to the psychological safety and role modeling. It's okay for us or the CEO to share genuinely how they are. It's okay to say, I feel really sad today. It's okay to say, I'm a bit tired today. It's Monday, but I'm really tired. It's okay. And also having those little nuggets, one, it creates safety and it gives people permission to share. And if a leader shares that, it gives you permission as HR professionals to really knock on their door and say, shall we have a chat? How can I help? As their trusted advisor.
On that note, can I just ask you before we throw it open to questions, and please do raise your hand if you have a question or just to let us know on chat. Do you each happen to have a story about how you've, as it were, opened up a leader a little bit? Because we all know that leaders can be perhaps a little bit tricky to get them to warm up and to open up in the way you're suggesting. I just wondered if you had a personal experience of one leader where it's worked well, perhaps even surprised you.
Yeah, I definitely have, Richard, for sure. There's a few experiences that I have. One of the most common ones, I think, is where I'm in a conversation with a leader before they're going to come in and perhaps do a webinar discussion with us and with various team members. And what I'll say to them is, I really would love you to be a bit vulnerable and show us a little bit of yourself and how you're dealing with things. And so often they'll say, yeah, I might go in there a little bit, but, you know, I don't want to show too much vulnerability because I'm a leader here and I need to be there for my team and I need to look like I'm strong. And what I say to them is, if you're doing that, then that means that they feel they need to do that as well. And what that means is that you're not being open and sharing about the difficulties you might be having in your actual day-to-day life, so that you can understand that you may need some space and time to deal with something so you can come back more resilient and strong. So I think there's a little bit of leaders feeling like that they can't show vulnerability. And I tell you, when they do it, their people appreciate it so much more. So that's one of the things that I experienced. Tali, I'm sure you experience a lot of it as well. And how do you get them to open up a little bit more?
Completely. So what you've just shared is the permission piece. The minute the CEO or the leader shows a bit of vulnerability, it's given everyone else permission, and I've experienced that. I've also just, partly because the way I am, if I notice a behavior change, or I notice that they're a bit tired, or I noticed in the pre-virtual world something was different, so it's really taken notice, I would just say, I have noticed whatever I've noticed. I will call out privately and very sensitively the difference of behavior I've seen, and I won't say any more than that. Just the fact that I've spotted it highlights that might be helpful to have a conversation. On the extreme side of that, what I have experienced as well, and Sheila, I'm sure you've experienced this, I've had some who literally have collapsed, either fainted or collapsed, or, they really had got to burnout and they weren't taking action. And when that happens, which it did several times, it opened up a whole new conversation. And what it does is it accelerates the conversation. And when that happens, it accelerates the vulnerability that we can talk about your well-being. At the end of the day, whilst you are a leader, a CEO, a manager, you're still a human being, and you will still have stuff going on, whatever it is. It could be as simple as burnout. I haven't eaten for 12 hours. or it could be something more serious.
Definitely. Richard, do you mind if I just add one